Welcome back. The COVID-19 pandemic has threatened most of the businesses, and most SMEs are likely to be wiped out completely. This is the case for most of the global SMEs, but African businesses seem significantly exposed due to the pre-existing conditions that hit by any pandemic will leave them gasping for air to survive. Pre-existing conditions in this sense refers to various SME practices that threatens the sustainability and more worse when there are economic disruptions. COVID-19 has been one of the major economic disruptions this year, but not the first, neither the last, especially for the African business environment. The African business environment, besides COVID-19, continues to experience other disruptions like political disruptions, especially during elections, climate change that affects the agricultural sector industry, unpredictable and volatile stock markets, economic recessions, and financial constraints limiting access to capital. These, among others, coupled with the pre-existing African business practices, threaten the survival of African businesses in the short term and the long term. How can entrepreneurs then build strong, sustainable, and lasting businesses within the African context in light of the above-mentioned challenges? Strathmore Business School will this Thursday hold a webinar under the theme Built to Last, Building Sustainable and Lasting Businesses in Africa. And I'm very excited because joining me here today to discuss the SME webinar dialogue is Eunice Muthoni and Ronald Bosi. I'm very happy to have you on the show, Eunice and Ronald.
Thank you. Thank you. And welcome. Yeah.
I'll let you start by introducing yourself so the audience just gets a feel of who's in studio here with us today and what we'll be discussing with regards to SMEs and the webinar that will be on Thursday. I'll start with you, Eunice. Just give us a brief background of who's Eunice and the role that you'll have within this dialogue.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Ingrid, for having us here. I'm so excited about this webinar. So my name is Eunice Muthoni Kimani. I work for Strathmore University Business School. Strathmore University Business School established a Center for Entrepreneurship Development, and that is the center where I head. So I'm the head of entrepreneurial programs. Right. And my mandate in that center is to build the capacity of small and medium enterprises, you know, through training, through coaching, through mentorship, through networking forums, all that to help the SMEs grow their businesses to the next level.
Right.
So I'm so excited to be here. So the webinar for Thursday is actually targeting SMEs across African continent. We are working with partners in Lagos Business School. We are working with other partners in Henry Business School in South Africa. And of course, we are also working with other stakeholders within the country. And most of them, including Ronald here, are our partners because they have undertaken programs in Strathmore University. So they are either alumni or current students. And so we are working together with them. So this is a webinar for SMEs by SMEs. Actually, the speakers, like all the speakers, almost all of them, are very successful SMEs. And so we think that as they come in to speak to other SMEs, the other SMEs that are especially struggling because of the COVID-19, they'll be able now at least to be encouraged.
It's so great that you brought up the speakers because I actually saw the flyer and I'm so excited about it. It's a very enriched panel. So I'll just cross over to you, Ronald. You could just also, just like Eunice, give us a brief introduction, your role in the webinar, and maybe you could just talk about the theme, Built to Last, you know, sustainability and why it's so important, particularly at a time like this.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Ronald Bosi. I'm the managing partner for Ronald's LLP East Africa. It's an accounting, tax, and advisory firm. So we advise SMEs on building structures, putting into place proper structures, processes, and systems that will enable their existence and survival, even in light of disruptions. So our contribution, our partnership with the Strathmore is to actually bring in the technical input to support them and try to put up the practical aspect of this webinar. And the essence of it is Built to Last is, it culminates from, if you look at the global environment, especially companies that are formed out of Africa, they've been there for more than 100 years, for many years. You look at the example of Coke, you can look at Colgate, they've been passed, look at Toyota, they've been passed from one generation to another. and they have not merely collapsed after a very short while. But if you look at the African SMEs or businesses, they exist within a very short time, a short span, and most of them are not able to last a generation.
Yes.
And I remember in one of the dailies there was an article that was written, are Kenyan corporates built on sand?
Right.
Because some of them, you look at the Kenya Airways, you look at Ochumi, at one time they were some of the most lucrative businesses around, but they have not lasted even more than 20 or 30 years. Some of them are struggling, their share prices have fallen. So there are challenges, and what we're saying is that there are pre-existing conditions, or they are set up, the formation and style of the African SMEs is so volatile that they are not able to transition from one generation to another. And these are some of the things we want to demystify during this webinar. And some of those issues that are affecting these SMEs and they are not able to transition from one generation to another, things like governance, things like leadership, how are these issues affecting these SMEs that they are not able to last a generation. And most of them, they are found by a certain founder or the entrepreneur. And when the entrepreneur ages or dies or is no longer part of the business shut down the doors. So these are the things that we need to demystify during this webinar.
Great.
Yeah.
Wow, like I feel like you really whet our test buds. I'm almost ready for this webinar.
Yeah.
But now just to talk about the details and the dialogue that will happen that day. Eunice, maybe you can tell us in terms of expectations, what should the audience have? Is it going to be like one of those setups where we get speakers just going on? Are we going to have panel discussions? Are we going to have breakout sessions? Just give us a little bit of details in terms of the flow, the rundown. This is what, as an entrepreneur, this is what, as a business owner, you should expect. This is the kind of value you're going to get out of this.
Okay. Yeah, so because of our audience, I just want to remind them about the date. The date is 10th of December, which is actually Thursday, the day after tomorrow. We will start at 2 p.m. East Africa time, and we shall run up to 5:30. So what we are going to do, the flow or the sequence of the webinar is that we are going to have to first of all start with opening remarks, of course from Strathmore University Business School. And then secondly, we shall have the keynote speaker from South Africa Henry Business School, Professor Andrew Godry, who is an expert in entrepreneurship. So he'll be talking about businesses in Africa, and you know, the challenges, the opportunities that are there, and it is actually going to go through the theme. And then after that, we shall have the two people giving the context setting, of course, to try and demystify the pillars that our friend Ronald has spoken about. When we are talking about governance for SME, what does that mean? When we are talking about leadership for an SME company, what does that mean? When we are talking about innovation, what does that mean? So somebody setting the context and trying to demystify and really trying to bring it down to a language that entrepreneurs can really understand. And then after that, we shall put these people in breakout sessions. At breakout sessions, we would like them to, of course, network, talk about the theme, building businesses that can last. They will be given a chance to explain, to explore opportunities that are there in Africa. A lot of them, we expect that out of this, they can build business linkages, because we expect that our SMEs should be able, to see market beyond Kenya. Can they start doing business with people in Nigeria? Can they start doing business with people in Ghana? How can this be done? And of course, from the chat box, because this is online and this is webinar, they'll be able to put their details there. We shall be able to capture that, and in fact, after the webinar, we shall be able to share all these details. They are able to even exchange their mobile numbers, their email addresses at the chat there, and that will really be maximized during the breakout sessions. Then after that, of course, we shall have a panel, and the panel, of course, is a panel of SMEs, you know, successful SMEs that will be talking about their success story. How did they, you know, how does governance for them work? How have they been able to embrace technology and innovation to be able to be where they are? And as they speak about that and opportunities that are there, their leadership, you know, their leadership styles that have enabled them to be what they are. Look at people like Optiven. Look at people like Ronald's, you know, an audit firm that is doing very well in East Africa. What have they been able to do differently? And as they speak about that in that panel, actually Ronald will be the moderator for the panel. And you see, these are SMEs that are very successful. And they'll be talking about what they have done to be able to be successful. And I believe that out of that, after that, there'll be a session for question and answer. SMEs can ask their fellow SMEs questions, and out of that, learning is going to happen.
Brilliant.
Yes.
But before we wind up, and also because Eunice pretty much just threw in there a little bit of high praise for you, you're going to moderate one of the key sessions. You have a, pretty well-established business yourself.
Yeah.
And earlier on, you mentioned a very vital point that I really intended to follow up on, where you made a comparison between big global companies that have existed for, the longest time, and they're all beyond Africa. We've seen Coca-Cola. They've really stood the test of time and competition. And then we're seeing a situation where the biggest corporates, big corporate companies in Africa just can't weather the storm. My question then is, in line with that discussion of building sustainable businesses, what key lessons would you say local African homegrown businesses can pick from those big multilaterals that they can bring on board? Because the truth of the matter is, there are businesses that have lasted even here in Africa from generation to generation. So how are they doing it differently?
Yeah, thank you. If you look at the global companies, on a very rare occasion, you'll find companies that are just owned by an individual. Most of the companies are owned by a group of people. And most often they are maybe listed as stock exchange, and they fundraise through the stock exchange. But you look at most of the Kenyan SMEs, they are family owned or they are individual owned by the founders. So this limits them from actually access to capital for expansion. And actually it also limits them to the founders' capabilities. And most of the business entrepreneurs and founders, they might not possess the necessary managerial skills to scale up the business. So the most important thing is, how can these SME owners create an environment of trust, so that you can be able to attract capital and share, maybe from outside the company. You can be able to attract shareholders, other shareholders who can come and inject in capital. And the pillars that we'll be talking about, they are actually elements of trust. Because sometimes you look at people, they find businesses, but nobody is trusting to put in the money. Maybe if you put in the money will be actually squandered by the founders or the entrepreneurs. So the first aspect of it, how can they create the trust that is there to attract capital from external parties? And the pillars that we'll be talking about, they're actually contributory to actually building that particular trust. And when you're talking about governance, nobody will want to invest in a company that is a one-man show, and the person only has is everything in the company. There must be a structural framework that supports the company even just beyond an individual. And for SMEs to do this, they have to have an understanding, because there's one thing to do it, and there's another thing is you have an understanding what maybe the financiers are expecting, and then the other thing is they also need to they have a commitment. Because you look at foreign companies, if you look at like Safaricom, has actually managed to scale up because of the various parties that are in place, the shareholders who have actually contributed to the well-being of the company. If you look at the global companies like Uber, you look at Amazon, all of them have actually intensively fundraised by creating the necessary pillars. And you believe that by the fact that they are creating some structures, this is going to last them for a longer time than those SMEs that are still dependent on one individual. And then I know time is running, but one of the things that I also want to talk about is innovation among SMEs. And one of the things that we want to communicate through this webinar very strongly, that businesses don't last long because of a superior product. Businesses, because product is relative. You might have a very good product, but if you don't have the proper pillars to support that product, then that business will close down. And you look at some of the global products like Coke, we might have other alternatives for Coke, which are more superior and more preferred. But you see, a global company, because it has the necessary framework, it has managed to thrive irrespective of the superiority of the product. So we're talking about there are other issues, or there are structural frameworks, or even the strategies that SMEs can employ so that they remain more sustainable and they last longer than the founders, and they're able to impact the society and employ many people and contribute to the economic development of this country.
Amazing.
And Africa, yeah.
Now, finally, in less than a minute, Eunice, with all that's been said, personally, I know for sure I'm joining this webinar. I'm interested and I'm going to do this. So I'm speaking for myself and anybody out there who's listened to us today and is like, so then how do I get on board? Where do I find the link? How do I access this webinar? And also, is it going to be a one-time thing? Is it free? Just maybe those final details for someone who might want to be a part of this.
Thank you. So the webinar is free for all the SMEs across the globe, of course targeting Africa. It's free. It's actually everywhere. On Facebook, you'll find it. On LinkedIn, you'll find it. You know, it's there. It's on Instagram. It's everywhere. If you just go there, you'll be able to get it. If you don't get it, then maybe I could give my number or my email address.
We'll post on our digital pages. So I'll get from you, and then we'll see how to circulate on our digital pages.
And then they'll just click and register. There is a link that is so easy to register, and they'll join through Zoom, which is so easy also. We have been able to empower our SMEs. They know how to join Zoom meetings, and it is an advantage for them.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Eunice. Thank you so much for Ronald for making time to join us here today and for the amazing work that you're doing. This is definitely a very timely conversation and looking forward to it. Unfortunately, we've come to the end of this hour of Metropole Business Center, and on Tuesday we always cast the spotlight on small and medium enterprises. My name is Ingrid Nantege. Don't go anywhere because we have so much more amazing programming coming your way right here on Metropole TV.